No amount of words can capture the impact Akira Toriyama had on so many lives. For anyone who grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, it's likely that Dragon Ball Z was your introduction to anime. No series has had more of an influence on anime in the West and shonen than Dragon Ball Z. It's a rare piece of culturally defining media that has stood the test of time. In remembrance of Akira Toriyama, I want to discuss some of the reasons why I think Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z is still worth watching in 2024. In the 40 years since it first began serialization, I still don't think a single shonen series has captured the purity of the genre quite like Dragon Ball Z. Z is razor-focused on exploring growth over time. The betterment of these characters comes from all angles, most obviously in their physical growth, but also through themes and character philosophies. The key to Dragon Ball's long-standing success is how Toriyama doesn't skip steps. Because Dragon Ball Z was pioneering new territory in the genre, each story progression feels logical. From the slice-of-life feel at the start of the story to the tournaments that overtook Dragon Ball's focus and eventually transforming into universe-defining action, Dragon Ball Z's structure grew alongside its characters. Its content matures alongside Goku, and as each story arc evolves, you can see Toriyama adding new tools into how he tells stories. His greatest tool is arguably humor. Toriyama's work on dozens of comedy series bears fruit here, as Dragon Ball's action is layered with some of the funniest characters and moments in the genre. Toriyama's humor comes from two places: visual gags and character. Visual gags are the lifeblood of Dragon Ball's manga, as time and time again, Toriyama utilizes paneling to create humor that is unique to the medium of comics. Character humor is what translates through adaptations. Whether it's Goku asking Krillin about how he can have kids with an android, or watching Satan pretend to be humanity's hero while not having a fraction of the Z Fighter's power, Toriyama is a genius at allowing character perspective and personality to bounce off one another in comedic ways. I would go as far as to say that only One Piece can rival Dragon Ball Z's humor, and it is something that should be talked about far more when discussing the series. Through a 2024 anime lens, Dragon Ball's characters are filled with tropes we've seen ad nauseum. The protagonist who isn't the smartest tool in the shed and eats like a garbage disposal is in basically every shonen these days. This trope and others like it can often feel like a crutch, but it never feels that way in Dragon Ball Z because of the logic put behind it. Goku is a literal alien who was raised in Earth's woods, essentially a heretic on the outside of humanity that was born to be a destructive force, but eventually grew up with caring friends and around martial arts. His longing to fight and eat good food, or his lack of intelligence, never needs to be explained because of his background. The same can't be said for many modern protagonists who seem to have the same personality without a strong reason for it. In a weird way, Goku feels fresh when compared to modern protagonists because of how clearly and simply Toriyama creates a through line between a character's background and personality. Toriyama's adherence to strong character work is the number one reason why this series is infinitely rewatchable. You will come to love the entire cast by the end of the series. Characters like Vegeta, Trunks, Cell, and Gohan all have prolonged character growth. Some offer up deep thematic exploration, like Gohan's view on pacifism or Piccolo's commentary on the nature of evil. Others are more personal arcs, like Vegeta, which I would argue is Toriyama's crowning achievement when it comes to character work. Vegeta is the major villain of the Saiyan saga and soon fulfills the role as Goku's newest rival. I love how non-linear his growth is. At times he takes huge steps forwards, and then just when you think he's changed for the better, he takes a step back. All character growth is accompanied with major leaps in power. The series is a battle anime after all, and Toriyama ensures that if his characters endure during a fight or training, they and the audience will be rewarded with major power-ups. Goku's transformation into a Super Saiyan is Dragon Ball Z's defining moment and a landmark step in anime. In fact, this moment is so iconic that almost every other series tries to replicate replicate its magic. While there are many great anime transformations, I think the amount of build-up Toriyama put into Goku's first major leap is what elevated it to a different status. No aspect of Dragon Ball Z has been under more scrutiny than its pacing, specifically the pacing of its fights. While this aspect of Z's story is more apparent in the anime adaptations than the manga, there is no denying that the fights can take a very long time to conclude. This is the most common reason for why modern anime fans struggle to get through DBZ. When you are used to fights in shows like My Hero Academia and Jujutsu Kaisen, Dragon Ball Z's fights crawl instead of run. But I think that's an oversimplification of Dragon Ball Z's action. Z's fights excel at communicating emotion and scale, and the length of the battles don't deter from that, but enhance it. I think it's important to go into Z's story with proper expectations. Here, the fights will not give you the same experience as the chess-like battles of Hunter x Hunter and JoJo's, nor does it have the same variance of techniques in shows like The Big Three, Jujutsu Kaisen, or My Hero. That isn't to say Dragon Ball Z doesn't offer up interesting fighting techniques, but it chooses to focus on character emotion above all else. Every encounter for Z's characters is putting their identity on the line. It doesn't matter if it's fighting to save the world or fighting in a friendly tournament. When their identity is on the line, it makes every conflict feel life or death. Again, Toriyama does not skip steps, and because of that, the conflicts can get long, but that does make the triumphant moments all the more impactful. I don't think Goku's transformation to Super Saiyan would have had near the same impact if the story didn't go through battle after battle, illustrating Frieza's godlike strength. It takes loss after loss to punctuate Goku overcoming this opponent. The audience feels elation when he becomes Super Saiyan because in that moment, he proves his worth through perseverance. If the battles were half the length, there's no way that this moment would hit as hard. These fights don't have the breakneck pace of modern shonen, but if you're willing to take time with them, I promise you will be rewarded with some of anime's best moments. In addition to pacing, power escalation is the other area of criticism leveled at Dragon Ball Z. While side characters can fade out of the narrative over time, I think power escalation is another major factor into why Dragon Ball Z succeeds, mainly in how Toriyama crafted the Cell Saga. The Cell Saga is a masterclass in how to raise stakes. Dragon Ball Z's first two sagas, Saiyan and Frieza, were all connected under the same general story arc. Each villain is fought with the knowledge that a greater foe looms above them. So at the conclusion of Frieza's story, it means Toriyama has to start from scratch. He does so with a message from a dystopian future that androids will kill all of the Z fighters and conquer the Earth. A fine reset to an arc, but Toriyama has another gear to reach as he introduces Cell. Here, Toriyama tells us how big of a threat the androids are through Trunks. He even illustrates Trunks' power by having him defeat Frieza right away, while Toriyama tells us how strong the threat of the androids are. We are not shown that strength until Cell forces his way into the narrative, making him even more intimidating than Frieza was. For my money, the Cell Saga is the holy grail of shonen anime, paving the way for how shonen series can continue to evolve over years. For Toriyama, it all comes back to character and tone. Dragon Ball Z is all about growth over time, and Cell grows alongside our heroes. He also forces the question of morality in the narrative, and it comes to fruition through his and Gohan's ideological battle. Elongated battles and power scaling is a purposeful choice by Toriyama to ensure maximum emotional impact for Dragon Ball Z's conflicts. These elements shouldn't scare modern audiences away from watching Z, but should be the reason why Dragon Ball can offer something different. There's another quality to Dragon Ball Z that is harder to quantify. I hesitate to chalk it up to nostalgia, albeit that could be exactly what it is, but I find the textures of Z's world, mainly through Toriyama's art style, to be better than almost anything coming out today. Toriyama is unmatched with the pen, creating an art style that is all at once endearing and exhilarating. After years of imitators and new pioneers, it takes all but one image for Toriyama to warp my mind into his world. Whether it's the design of technology or the outfits of the Saiyans, Dragon Ball Z's world is a world I desperately want to live in. Even if modern adaptations have animation that blows Dragon Ball Z's out of the water, it is the inherent quality and uniqueness of Toriyama's artwork that offers textures unmatched in anime. Of course, these textures are at their best when you read the manga, but it would be a shame if we tossed aside the anime adaptation in favor of newer, flashier animation when DBZ's world offers a timeless quality. A huge part of Dragon Ball Z's legacy is the individual experiences it has provided millions of people. For so many, Dragon Ball was the series that helped them through difficult times. It would be limiting not to mention that essential aspect of its legacy, how it has personally affected people. Because of that, I think talking about my most watched arc of Dragon Ball Z is a fitting conclusion to this video. At the start of Dragon Ball Z's final saga, the Majin Buu saga, we get two arcs, the Great Saiyaman and World Tournament, and those are the stretch of episodes I maybe have seen the most. I don't think this set of chapters and episodes are the peak of what Dragon Ball has to offer, yet I found myself returning to them time and time again throughout the years. I've always loved the downtime in shonen stories, the cracks between major plot developments where you just get to hang out with the characters. The gold standard for any great cast is if you're willing to watch episodes with them just hanging out. If so, then you have a good cast on your hands. If not, something might need to be reworked. In this stretch of the story, we watch Gohan and Videl develop a relationship, see Goten and Trunks start to grow up, and reminisce with old friends. The end of this slice of life stretch of Z's story is the World Martial Arts Tournament and captures what Dragon Ball was and what Dragon Ball Z became. Dragon Ball was a comedy action show that would later form into the focused action of Z. Its story following the growth of fighters who compete against friends and rivals alike on their journey to proving their strength. These friendly competitions turned dangerous as the story continues, and that is what the World Martial Arts Tournament captures. The deeper character motivations and world building break free from that structure as we are catapulted from the tournament into the plot of the Majin Buu saga. Before the plot takes over, Toriyama gives us time to be with the characters, to ruminate after the insanity that is the Cell Saga, and it's the reason why I'm drawn to this arc. I think it's no coincidence that those are the stretch of episodes I turned on after hearing the news of Toriyama's passing, for within them is the heart of Dragon Ball Z. It has the humor, action, and compelling characters that makes it a series that will be a part of me for the rest of my days. Dragon Ball Z was a pioneer of the shonen battle genre. It has maybe more influence on anime than any other series and still holds up to the test of time. It shows that with good character work and strong vision, you can create something that will not come and go with the trends of an era, but will be a pillar that lasts forever. Even in 24, I think Dragon Ball Z still holds up amongst the best shonen anime has to offer, and I think it's still worth watching and reading.